I've been asked to do today is to moderate a quick workshop on creative programming and looking at producing our events and our programs a bit more interestingly and attractively for those who possibly are in attendance or more significantly we want to come. So the first thing I want to just look at briefly is if I was to ask this group, as I did with the green dots, define your audience. Would 60% of your audience be local? Would that be fair? Or would it be higher, as you understand your audience right now today? And I'm not going to ask you to name your audience, but just 60? Yeah. Higher? 75? 80? 80%. Okay. We did an exercise in Carlow 3 weeks ago where everybody said the same thing, and I said, wonderful. Where is that local audience now? And they said, oh, it's here in our village, or it's here in our town. And I said, really? This is Fáilte Ireland tracking of the Irish festival family. And the time that they will take to travel to a local event there and back is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And somebody said to me, well, Colm, we haven't time to count all the people that are local or that aren't local. And I said, that's great, because there's an agency of the state that does that for us. It's called the CSO. But in the context of producing events, and producing attractions that we can get people to come to, I'm just saying to reconsider where that local catchment area is as you produce your marketing plans, your leaflet drops, your flyer campaigns. Who do you want to talk to? Who do you need to talk to? And the CSO, right down to the postal district, has worked out how many cars there are in each drive and what type of households there are and if there's kids in those households. That's all done for us up to 2011, free of charge and online. 80% of all the Irish festival and event programs stay the same. So in encouraging you to all go off and be mad creatives, I'm also injecting a note of caution that the people who are already coming to your event do so because they're aware of the signature boardwalk, they like the particular lecture, they enjoy the Music in the Courtyard series. Whatever it is that you're doing that has the core crowd coming has to remain the same. So typically, if you want to change and do something a bit differently, it's the 20%. And then you change 20% each year a bit differently. There's about 30 new festivals each year. There's about 200 new events that we can track. When I say new now, not the new that you've wonderfully described, which is the real, take another event from somewhere else and adopt it. As somebody said, it's not quite cut and paste. It's more cut and massage to suit your own situation. Which is an interesting take on stealing someone's ideas. And the percentage of events or festivals that get to their 4th birthday is about 18%. There's a huge rate of attrition here. And after the 3rd cycle, most volunteers, most teams, most project leaders are that exhausted from pushing the boulder up the hill at the steep incline. They go, oh, that's it, look, I'm out of here, good luck. I'm off to work with the cricket club, or I'm going to do something for Conquer Cancer, or I'm going to do something else. Because again, of the 46,000 volunteers that animate this sector, which is about 6,000 more than the community games, most of them have other community responsibilities as well. One of the first issues of looking at an event or a program or a production cycle is that the pioneers tend to make the worst settlers, and those that are not involved at all are excluded. So if you've been involved since 1986 with a particular project, then somebody who's just blown into town 2 years ago is now working as a researcher with the University of Maynooth. Their ideas will not be as much valued in our society as somebody who has been the pioneer and settler of the program. And I think if you're going to do this well, or going to embrace this concept aggressively, you need to value all the suggestions. From those who stood with their wellies in the field for the last 18 summers, to those who just arrived in and are now retired from the University of Saquistan and have developed Indian Reservation Hill museums for the last 30 years and written about them. So if you're going to do creatively properly, you value both. To encourage brainstorming, you have to move the mindset away from the traditional Irish meeting of minutes, matters arising, votes of sympathy, condolences, blather, 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 and then we'll all go for a pint. And we'll have the real chat over the pint, because that sort of format does not really lend itself to brainstorming. First issue you got to do is to discourage the possessiveness that's within all of us. And we are very possessive when it comes to volunteerism or indeed to event management. And if creatively looking at how you're doing stuff is to work, you have to discourage that possessiveness. That then will foster a bit of trust, because the worst thing about creativity is you have to embrace new ideas, and you're only going to embrace them properly is if you can trust the person that's actually sharing them with you. The other issue is the language that we use when we're brainstorming. When we're looking at, okay, blue skies, here's a blank sheet of paper. What are we doing for Heritage Week this year? Agree early on, we're now going to do a 45-minute brainstorming session. The following lines of usual hide behind can't be used. Like, we can't afford that, we don't have the budget for that, or we could never do that, the Monsignor would never give us the keys to the presbytery ever again if we put 4 go-go dancers and a chrome pole under the porch at 10:30 at night. Yeah? So we need to declutter ourselves from the real... I mean, years ago, if somebody didn't want to do something, we just said no. And we could get away with it. Now we have to hide behind that. That's a wonderful idea, Nuala, but I wonder would we get insurance for that? And that's the new no. You know, kick it all into the insurance problem, and yes, that's a great idea, wonderful, but we'd never get that insured. That sort of thing is not insurable. I'm here to tell you that everything you want to do can be insured. It's just a question of what price you want to pay for your premium. Creativity sessions. When's the last time your organisation or team did something creatively?
Yesterday.
Good. You're on my team. It's not something we do. And actually, if you want to do this well and reimagine your program or reimagine how you're going to produce what it is you're producing, a bit of creativity in the mix doesn't go astray. And the best people to lead on that are, of course, our artists, our musicians, our sculptors, our painters, our poets, who are already residing within our communities. And again, casual atmospherics help. You're not going to get creativity out of a situation like this. This just is, you know, is not positive, really. The feng shui of this room doesn't lend itself to creativity. What might, and works in some instances, is the blank sheets, the crayons and the mala, and you now have 10 minutes to draw what, in your opinion, would be the ideal visual from your Heritage Week in your community at your location. Non-festival, non-event, non-core activities. I want to say non, I mean, yes, if you're all into heritage boffins in the agricultural field and you love going to one county ploughing championships to another to see the old drays and the old ploughing machines out there, well then that's not what I'm talking about. Take yourself out of that comfort zone. Go and do something else as a group, but do it with a view towards watching how a new audience is engaging in something else. And come back with 10 learnings that you can share with the rest of the group. The camcorder is a great gadget to take with you so that you can actually record what's been done differently, that perhaps, like our good friend from Kilkenny says, we could sculpt, modify, change, adapt to suit our own situation. To encourage team ownership is important. And again, in brainstorming, you have to be able to allow everyone's idea, whether they're the gardener, whether they are the car parking attendant, or the director of finance, their ideas get treated the same way. The amount of walled towns and castles and stately homes that end up having to pay for actors and pay for costumes to do stuff. When you're going, is there not a musical society close by? Is there not an amateur dramatic society close by? Is there not an opera, a choir who could come in and do that for, you know, €100 of a fee towards the cost of their costumes and whatever? Did anyone see or recall the Dead Poets Society film? Yeah? You know that magical scene where William says to them, well, you've all been in this classroom now for 5 years and you think you know everything about the classroom. Yes, yes. And all the kids go, absolutely. So he's right, great. Stand up in the seats and now look around the classroom. And they see a different classroom. And I suppose we have to, when it comes to our platform Cayley in the field or to the barracks in Kilkenny that you're building the military museum in, to look at the venue or the landscape that you're in, that you have been animating for the last 20 seasons, 30 seasons, 15 seasons, differently. Huge growth in Wales now of art and nature trails, where you walk along different parts of the landscape and you're met every 2 and 2.5 kilometres by different artists in the, you know, where do all the timber huts go after Christmas markets? There must be 900 Christmas huts all around the island. Where do they go for the other 11 months of the year? In Wales, they're used for art trails. And they're dotted around, and the artist goes into them for the weekend of the trail, and they fire their pots, or do their paintings, do their sketchings, make their jewellery, decorate their slates as you walk along or cycle along. Infrastructure of the hosting location, and I can think of no better than the large country house that always use the stables or the stable areas there to house the barriers in, or to house the catering truck wagon material in. No, the stables is the place where we have the stable storytelling. We'll put in 10 round bales, put the kids in the round bales, and actually do some storytelling in there, and it'll be all about farm animals. Yeah? Now, there's a disused, ugly part of the site, and all of a sudden now becomes a key part of the infrastructure of the event, because you've looked at it slightly differently. And if it's not fun, here's the painful thing, it goes back to the earlier comment, your current audiences and the new ones that you're trying to reach out to will certainly not follow. So I want you to again look at landscape, where it is that your event is contextualized. Even from where people park, if they go to the village fort on the hill of Tara every day, for every weekend for 40 weekends, and they're met by the yellow bibbed, and very polite and very staff, but for Heritage Week, they're all met by what would have met St. Patrick in the same robes. Imagine the instant impact that has on the attendee going into a place that they would spend a typical Sunday afternoon in or whatever. So could you do a dawn walk around your particular premises, location, Foreshore Forest, on that particular Heritage Week? I don't know. And again, dusk is a great time of the evening. If you look at, what could you light in these big windows of the battlements or of the castle or of the military barracks or the farmhouse, a candle in a darkened window, a couple of dancers doing a dance show for 20 minutes behind a mosaic of silk with backlighting through 3 or 4 large front windows of a disused granary or a disused canal store. Just with small lighting would transform the building. Yeah. Shop fronts, the amount of shop fronts, old and new, that are around all our villages and towns that are empty because of the death of the Celtic badger, are ideal locations to place some collateral, some marketing material, some exhibition material that typically is always in the castle or is always in the library, or there's a lovely collection of old maps that you're now getting done, and they show the growth of the village from the 1600s and the Elizabethan conquest settlement, 1710, the landowners, the Quakers, and those maps are always wonderfully in libraries where very few people tend to go in to view them. Imagine if they were in the old disused land list on High Street, on the main street, for 2 weeks before Heritage Week. Communal cooking and the arts of artisan cooking are now so nearly lost to this current generation that people will stand on the street. There's 2.5 grand's worth of Arts Council sponsored art going on the stage, and there's a huddle 10 deep around somebody actually churning and making a pat of butter, because we have forgotten how butter was ever made. Ditto the potato farl, ditto the soda cake, ditto. List out the things that your grannies taught you to make that are now no longer being made in the homesteads. They're being bought and consumed. Yes, black pudding. Has anyone seen the black pudding made in the last 30 years? No. They were made in country cottages years ago, without the thermometer terrorists telling us we couldn't do it, but nevertheless. So there's a whole pile of artisan crafts through food and cuisine that could be, I suspect, could be woven into your events. Louis is a restaurateur in Pittsburgh. I got to go to Pittsburgh for this one. But when I read it, I laughed, because I said, yeah, absolutely. This is where most Irish people fall down when it comes to programming for kids. So it's, the gratuity we're fine. We're not responsible for lost or stolen articles. Unattended children will be given an espresso and a free kitten. And I think a lot of us, when it comes to producing events for families and kids, have the free kitten and espresso in mind. Yeah? Oh, now we have a very good kids program now. It's done by Julia. She's a national school teacher now for 16 years, and Tom is a youth leader, and he helps her with it, and it's great, and the kids love it. Okay, but what about, you have to talk to Tom now and Julia. Okay. So, and you want teenagers to be involved. Okay. So why are we not getting the teenagers to program what they would like to do? And if it means that they're going to suggest skateboarding across the cannonballs on the front of the castle, let them suggest it. If it means they want to build a timber skateboard deck across the ramparts of the military compound, then let's do it. Let's think about it. Because if that brings more of them to skateboard in a ring fort or an iron dolmen or a fairy hill, then you're halfway there. A couple of websites here that I think you should really take a look at. There are 3 islands on the globe that are trying to do what Paddy is trying to do. The 3 islands are Tasmania, Hawaii, and Prince Edward Island. And what they're trying to do, I'm not encouraging us to go wearing grass skirts. What those 3 island economies are trying to do is to place GDP, gross domestic product, at 35% from international tourism. and Paddy is trying to follow them in that space. And heritage and community events are key to keeping international visitors engaged on this island. So TasmaniaFestivalEvents.com, PrinceEdwardIslandsEvents.com, and what was the other one? Hawaii I haven't put up because Hawaii is all grass skirts and roasting hogs in banana leaves, and it's not really. But those two islands are in the same zones as our island is in terms of weather. Don't think everyone goes, oh, the weather, Colin, the weather, should they have the weather? Well, it rains more in PEI and it rains more in Tasmania, and they have more events than us. And in PEI and in Tasmania, both, every town and village is celebrating 5 or 10 times a year their actual convict or their colonial heritage past. And when I say celebrating, they're closing the town down, they're all dressing up for a week in 17th century convict costume or in 19th century planter dress or whatever, and that's even the forecourt attendants, even the McDonald's staff do it. And they all get with the programme and go completely historical and heritage for that week of the year. This was Feis Ceoil in Cavan 2 years ago. Dancing always works, provided the facilities are correct. First thing is the timber, going back to the platform Cayley. There's the platform there outside the door. Didn't take a lot of money to build that. That's a couple of crates and a bit of 8x4. What's also good about this is that there are no feis mommies there, and there isn't 7,500 worth of embroidery and hairstyling falling off any of those kids, which means that the other kids are not intimidated. In Berlin, this is Berlin, the bear is the mascot of Berlin. There's the family sitting inside it. Underneath was the next festival coming up. And as they take it, they move that straight up to Facebook. Clever, clever stuff. Toos have a power of people with great, great skills in metalwork, sheetwork, carpentry, building, because they come in off that particular strata of the employment court. Toos. Down in, I think it was in Clonakilty, 3 Toos schemes got together and they produced from throwaway barrels the little trains for the kids. For a zip, you know, using discarded material that were being pulled by tractors. And it just added to a nighttime parade because they just lit them with a small little Chinese lantern at the top. And the final clip I'd give you, or tip I'd give you, is never to underestimate the power of bringing in the volunteer family. Not just a volunteer, but a volunteer family. This is the Heart of the Glens Festival in Antrim, wonderful family festival. That was their youngest volunteer last summer. 12 months. But that photograph was in the front of their festival brochure, was on their website. That young person, that infant, will always be involved with that festival. So just have a think about how you can engage people as the complete family in doing stuff as volunteers on your programme, not just as audience. Best of luck with your events.